Ladies and gentlemen, we are fighting for freedom of speech at home and across the world. Please welcome Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn.
Well, hello there. I am delighted to see you all. I look forward to CPAC every single year, seeing friends, being with happy warriors and fellow conservatives. I absolutely love it. This year is no different, but I'm going to tell you something that is different this year. And it's not just that we're all wearing masks and we have COVID-19 compliments of China. It is that we have a bunch of radical liberals in the White House, the House and the Senate, and they are determined to radically change this country. And it is very evident in the area of free speech. They are determined to take away your free speech and the First Amendment. Now, here is what the First Amendment actually says. Congress shall make no law. That is an order, shall. They can't do it. They cannot make a law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for the redress of grievances. First Amendment, most important amendment. If they take that one away, you can be certain they are going to come for your Second Amendment rights. And they're going to go right on down the line. This is the core of the cancel culture. Quite frankly, they want to shut you up, take away your ability to talk to others, and cancel you. Now, I bet if I asked for a show of hands, how many of you have lived with being blocked or shadow banned or throttled or censored? I see a lot of hands going up. You know, we all lived through it in this election, didn't we? I've been through it too, but nobody has been hit by this like President Donald Trump. First, they decided they were going to fact-check him, the leader of the free world, and then they were going to block him, send a message, and then they were going to temporarily ban him. Then they were going to permanently ban him from Facebook and Twitter, the leader of the free world. But if you go on Twitter today, the supreme leader of Iran, Xi Jinping from China, Putin, and other despotic leaders, they are on there spewing their hate, their vitriol. They have not been fact-checked or banned that I can find. But us conservatives, we have had to put up with this. Big tech, big media, and the Democrats are never going to stop trying to silence us, but they don't realize we are going to fight back. And even though Mark Zuckerberg says that Facebook works more like a government than a company, they think these guys, they all think they're the gods of the Silicon Valley or the masters of the virtual universe. They are so brazen. This week we even had Democrats in the House send letters to cable news providers and streaming services saying that they needed to shut down these conservative outlets like One America News and Newsmax and Fox News because they were giving differing opinions. They were guilty of robust, respectful political debate, giving two sides of the story. So they wanted to shut them down. See, they are pressuring media outlets to cancel conservatives. But I don't think you all are going to let them do this, are you? I think not. And I have to tell you, this is more than content moderation, which is what big tech likes to say they're doing. Just making certain people are polite. This is about controlling what you see, hear, and say, thereby what you think and how you vote. The left is telling you to submit or they will cancel you. Conform or they will cancel you. Sounds a lot like Communist China, doesn't it? The Chinese Communist Party during COVID, they locked people in their apartments, cut off their communication with others, wouldn't let them travel around China, but you could go anywhere else in the world. China carrying out human rights violations against the Hong Kong freedom fighters, Tibet, Taiwan. They've got the Uyghurs in slave encampments, internment centers. Look at what they do with the economy to American innovators. They rob, replicate, replace. They steal your intellectual property, they create it themselves, and then they replace you in the marketplace, taking millions of American jobs. They're trying to steal the minds of our children and our college students with Confucius Institutes and classrooms. This is why we have to keep blocking Huawei, which is the spy network for big tech. They're trying to build a virtual you online. Thank goodness President Donald Trump understood China. He understood this, and he was standing up for the United States because China is trying to cancel the United States of America. China and big tech, they have a cozy relationship. And they have been allowing the Chinese Communist Party to spew all of their information. I can't find anywhere that they've been censored or blocked or banned. Big tech is aiding and abetting the Chinese Communist Party in their push for global dominance. And we are going to have to stand against it. So the question is, what are we going to do about it? And my question to you is, are you all ready to fight back against big tech, against big media, against censorship? Are you ready for the fight? All right, that's great. What we have is the Virtual You Protection Agenda. Let's start with online privacy. Big tech, this is what we will say to big tech. You cannot track, follow, listen, data mine, or share your information with a third party without getting your explicit consent. It is your privacy. When it comes to Section 230, and you've heard a lot about Section 230, haven't you? When it comes to censorship, they cannot come in and remove you, remove or block you or throttle you without telling you explicitly why. And to big tech, we say, we're going to take away from you these Section 230 provisions, and we're going to save them for little tech, the new entrants in the marketplace, so that we have choice and options. Dealing with China means we have to bring our manufacturing back to the United States of America. We have to continue to support what President Trump was doing to hold China to account. We have to end these Confucius Institutes so that they cannot steal the minds of our college students and spread their soft propaganda. We have to continue to block Huawei. Thank goodness President Trump did that. And make certain that their spyware is not getting into your electronics and networks. And on the First Amendment that is the most important amendment, it is we, the people, that are going to have to stand up and tell big tech and big media that enough is enough. We are going to have to tell them we will not stand for them to cancel conservatives. We will not stand for them shutting us down on social media. We will not stand for them ending conservative and religious TV programs, music and entertainment that is enjoyed by, we know, at least 74 million hardworking, tax-paying Americans. So, it is going to be up to us to stand up for that First Amendment, to make the point that we, the people, treasure that right to worship as we please. We treasure that right to speak our mind and have an opinion. We treasure the ability to meet, to peaceably assemble, like we are doing here today. And we treasure our right to petition our government. And on that I will say, Nancy Pelosi, let's get the fencing and the wire down and away from the U.S. Capitol. You know, it is important that we have robust, respectful political debate. But in order to keep this in this country, in order for us to have the ability to defend the Constitution, to defend our rights, to vote for the candidate of our choice, it is imperative that we continue the work that we in the U.S. Senate started with President Donald Trump, and that we stand up to China, that we stand up to big tech, and that we continue to protect the Constitution and all of our Bill of Rights. Are you with me? Are you ready to go to work? All right, let's go fight to make certain we protect the Bill of Rights. Stand up for freedom. Thank you all. God bless you.
Welcome to Our Freedom Media Group, where freedom is real. Experience all our platforms for yourself now at www.ourfreedommg.com. Tired of restrictive social media platforms? Join Our Freedom Book. Tired of selective video upload and crowdfunding sites? Join Our Freedom Tube or Our Freedom Funding. With features that include live streaming, video calling and messaging, plus a 24/7 friend finder with map geolocation, American-owned and made in the USA. We're a place where your freedom of speech will be honored. Exercise your right on a secure social media platform without bias, censors, or bans, where your ideas can compete on a level field. If you're looking for a site that doesn't fact-check you and send you to fake jail, a site that cancels cancel culture, then Our Freedom Media Group is the freedom you've been waiting for. Sign up today at ourfreedommg.com, where freedom is real.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is a set of curated speeches tackling the left's assault on free people. How government, big tech, and media are colluding to deprive us of our humanity. From the Ben Ferguson Show, please welcome Ben Ferguson.
So I come bearing great news. I just got word while you've been in here that Mitt Romney has been banned from Twitter. I got bad news. It was only his fake account. It's not his real one. Just his fake account. My bad, my bad. We are under attack if you are a conservative. If you are a conservative, you're on social media, you are to be banished. You cannot have an opinion. Now, you would think this is something that normally happens in places like Venezuela and like Ayatollahs that would be banned from Twitter, from being violent, from saying terrible things. Yet somehow I'm sure that Assad will be able to tweet this afternoon, or his friends, about what happened there last night, because we protect that free speech in America more than the free speech of conservative Americans just like each and every one of you. This genuinely may be the most important panel of this year because there's so many conservatives that are being silenced. There are so many conservatives that are a threat to big tech. And we know that this White House is not going to protect us. And we know that Mitt Romney is not going to protect us either, unless you have a fake account. So what we've decided to do today is do something that I think is really, really important, and that is to break down what we have to do. Where are we safe? Where can we go? If you spend a decade, like I and many other talk show hosts, building a platform on places like Facebook, to realize that now you can't reach any of your followers. When you have other brands that you worked on that have nothing to do with politics and they threaten to shut them down. True story. I have a barbecue restaurant that they have threatened to shut down. I promise there's nothing political on there, but it's connected to me and my name. So therefore, we're going to hurt you, your businesses, your small businesses. We're going to destroy conservatives. We're going to make sure that you don't exist on the internet, which is kind of important to be able to reach people. They've already canceled us from everywhere else. So what do? Do we run? Do we fight? And where are we safe? So is there a safe place for conservatives? Well, my first guest that is going to come out and talk to you guys is a man that said several years ago, we got to find a safe place for conservatives because they saw it coming. You could see that they wanted to silence us. A founder, a CEO that started something called Clout Hub, where you have a safe place as a conservative, where you will not be banned for what you say. Pretty nice idea, right? We're the United States of America. We're supposed to have free speech. I want you to hear from this founder, Jeff Brain, who's going to talk to you about phase one of what we have to do to fight and how we fight to get our voice and our message heard. Give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, all of you. Glad to be here. Donald Trump, Michael Flynn, Sidney Powell, Steve Bannon, Mike Lindell, Rudy Giuliani. What do all these individuals have in common? Not only freedom fighters, but they've been banned and deplatformed from social media. Of course, you don't have to be the President of the United States or America's most famous pillow maker to be censored. Raise your hand if you have personally experienced censorship on social media. Raise your hand if you have recently had your followers reduced from Facebook or Twitter. Big tech has become Big Brother, and your privacy has become their currency. And in their quest for profits, your mental health has become irrelevant. They have us focused on things that don't matter and limit what we see in order to impose their values on us. They have declared war on our freedoms and freedom-loving Americans. And that's why in 2018, I decided to create Clout Hub. Now, what is Clout Hub? And thank you. What is Clout Hub and why is it different? Well, we promote thought and debate. We don't police it. We protect your privacy. We don't sell it. And we put your mental health above profit. We actually used neuroscience consultants to make sure our platform is healthy to use. But even more than that, what we're doing is we're redefining social media. Today's social media is really about, look at me. I got this many likes, this many followers. It's not benefiting society. We are using the power of social media to bring people back together and enable them to connect, collaborate, and influence the issues that impact your lives, your communities, your freedoms, society, and our country. We're the first ever social media platform specifically created for engagement on the civic, social, and political issues that you care about. There are many challenges facing society and our country today. It's no longer enough to be on a platform where you merely just post in exchange for likes. We need to be on platforms where we can actually engage, organize, mobilize, and advocate for the issues that are important to us. We give individuals and organizations the tools they need to successfully engage, to hold leaders and our decision makers accountable for their behavior and their decisions that they make, and return power to we the people to reclaim control over our lives, our social media, and our government. Imagine if you read this morning that Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram all merged together. That is actually what CloutHub is. CloutHub is an all-in-one, convenient platform that enables you to do everything you want on one platform. We have groups like Facebook. In fact, Walkaway recently came over to CloutHub after they were banned from Facebook. In the state of Florida, you have Defend Florida, an organization that's now working to take back communities and government. And they will be spreading across the United States with Defend Arizona, Defend Michigan, Defend California, and they are doing that on CloutHub. And we encourage you all to come to CloutHub, form your groups where you are safe to organize and mobilize. We also have a public forum like Twitter. We have channels with many of your favorite personalities, Steve Bannon, Mike Lindell, RSBN News, Real America's Voice, Wayne Dupree, and many more. In fact, CPAC just recently added a channel to CloutHub. We also have video sharing, like YouTube, and a newsroom where you can see uncensored news. In the near future, we'll be adding a civic hub. We'll be adding, these are some of the tools that we'll have where you can actually engage with your legislators. In the Civic Hub, you'll access your federal, state, and local resources and legislators and decision makers. We'll be adding a faith hub where you can share and grow your faith. We'll be adding a private hub where you can, like Facebook used to be, where you talk privately with your friends and family, felt private. We'll be adding a business hub, an education hub, an entertainment hub, a sports hub, and a business hub. You can see we're not an alternative to Twitter, we're much more. We're connecting you to all the elements that advance your life and society. Now, we are a platform for everybody. Everybody is welcome. But already, General Flynn, Katrina Pearson, Dr. Gina Loudon, David Webb, John Solomon, Kevin Sorbo, Bernie Carrick, Wayne Dupree, Tracy Beans, Rudy Giuliani, Pastor Greg Locke, and as of yesterday, Paula White are getting involved. And they're getting involved not to post, but to help us change the world. They're ambassadors for us. They're actively engaged in helping grow our platform. Clout stands for influence, and that's what we're looking to give you. I don't know what drives Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey, but we're here to empower you. Particularly this group, after what happened recently, should be engaged on CloutHub. So I would, these are some of the ambassadors that are involved with us. We have about 30 of them, all that you would know. But I would encourage you, if you support free speech and believe that social media should become a force for good and a place where we can organize and take action, not just do, but take action and start to solve problems again, I encourage you to join us in the front lines of this revolution. Pull out your phone right now and join CloutHub. Download our app to ensure that you won't be the next victim of cancer culture. Make CloutHub your platform for civic engagement, debate, and organizing with other freedom-loving Americans. Share it with your friends. Help us create a new future for social media that empowers we the people to reclaim control of our lives and our country. Thank you very much.
So the question is, do we concede ground and run away from anywhere? Hollywood is a place that many have said, get out of. I just say get out of California, but that's for different reasons. Am I right? And by the way, if any of you are from California, God bless you with your recount, because it's going to be That's what I'm talking about. I would have bet against it, I'm not going to lie, but I figured, especially when people are like running from the state, I'm like, well, all the conservatives leaving, you aren't going to get the signatures, and you did it. Well done. So the question is, what do we do when it comes to Hollywood? How do we fight back? Because I'm a fighter. I don't like to concede. But how do you even get in there, right? How do you even infiltrate Hollywood that hates and despises us? There's a man that's going to come out here right now, a director and a producer, who understands Hollywood and big media and what conservatives need to do. Please give a warm welcome to Robbie Starbuck.
Hello, CPAC. How are you guys doing? If you don't know me already, I started out as a director-producer in Hollywood. I've directed Oscar-winning actors, actresses, and some of the biggest music stars in the world. But in 2015, I came out as a Republican, the most unforgivable crime you can commit in Hollywood. And then I endorsed Trump, which they didn't know that you could do something worse than come out as Republican, but that was it. That was not a very popular thing to do. But I would do it all over again 1,000,000 times if given the chance, despite losing 85% of our business in that first year, and my little girl being called a racist because her Cuban dad was conservative. And I would do it over and over again because this country gave me the opportunity to stand up. And that's something that a lot of people lose sight of. There's people in China and in Cuba who don't have that luxury. So I will stand up every single time. So today I am here to stand up and tell you that I am critically concerned about the relationship that big tech has with the Democratic Party and government at large. It doesn't stop just, on the base level of, oh, there's censorship. If you pull a layer back, you'll see that at each one of these big tech companies, they are actually hiring people that have worked for the Democrats. At Twitter, their comms director worked for Kamala Harris as her press secretary. At Instagram, theirs used to work for Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton. And at Facebook, theirs worked for Barbara Boxer. The list goes on and on. I could be here my entire time slot if I kept going. To make matters worse, there's people in Congress who actually endorse their silencing of you, and not only that, they believe it should go a step further. They want there to be a social credit system because then you'll be so afraid to state your opinion that you'll hold it back for fear that your business will be destroyed, your access to the platforms will be destroyed. This is why we need to acknowledge as conservatives that we are in a culture war and we are losing. And if we want to win, we need to acknowledge that fact. Culture is an important question. They recently had Joe Biden on CNN, and they did something that I never thought CNN would do, but they asked him about the Uyghurs in China who are being raped, tortured, and children are being kidnapped, forced to praise China as their mother and to praise communism as their savior. They asked Joe Biden about it, and he said it amounted to a mere cultural difference. I don't think that more disgusting words have ever left the lips of an American president. And it was at that moment that if you didn't already know that he was not an American president, that was the moment where you should have known he was China's first president of America. And why is that important? That's important because our own culture is shifting. So if he can discredit that to just a mere cultural difference, what will the leader of the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party at large do when our own culture shifts to a point where, I can give you an example, recently a lawyer at PBS, yes, PBS, where they make children's show, a lawyer there called for Republicans' children to be put into re-education camps. So what happens if our own culture shifts to that point where that becomes acceptable? I think we all know the answer to that, and that's why we have to fight back. So I want to praise the people who are doing it right. People like the Daily Wire, who just hired Gina Carano after she was fired by Disney and Lucasfilms. Ron DeSantis and Josh Hawley, who are fighting through legislation. And now to all of us, what we need to do, we need to put the pressure on our AGs, our state legislatures, our congressmen, congresswomen. We need to pressure our governors to go ahead and bring that fight the same way that Ron DeSantis and Josh Hawley have, and people like Matt Gaetz, who's following after me. Our biggest donors need to match them with funding, because we are not going to be given a seat at the table by these people in Hollywood. It is never going to happen. We have to build our own pillars of culture in academia, publishing, music, film, all around. And I'm not talking about something that's narrowly attractive. I'm talking about something that's broadly attractive to everybody, because that's how the left got here. They used subtlety to change the minds of children, reaffirmed it at college, and then the kids came home hating the values their parents had raised them with. We can't allow that to happen for another generation, so I am calling us all to action. You know, Ronald Reagan once said that we had a time for choosing, and I'm saying that we have a time for choosing again. If we want this party to survive, we need to go back to his words. Reagan once said that we face the greatest enemy in man's long climb from the swamp to the stars, and that if we lose that war, that in so doing we would lose this freedom of ours. He then said that history would record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to stop it. We need to make sure that that's not how history records us. He went on to tell a story about a Cuban refugee and two businessmen, where the two businessmen were listening to the refugee tell his story. One businessman turned to the other and said, "We don't realize how lucky we are." And the Cuban turned to them and said, "No, you don't realize how lucky I am. I had someplace to go to." And in that sentence, he told the entire story, because this is our last stand. This is freedom's last stand. If America falls, freedom falls. And so we all need to double our efforts. We all need to double our efforts and make sure that we left nothing on the table, because this is a fight worth having, this is a country worth saving, and freedom is something that should be a human right. And we are the fighters who need to ensure that the next generation has it. This country is what makes possible for my own mom to come from Cuba, going into the unknown, leaving the only home she'd ever known after it was stolen by communism, only able to bring one item with her. She brought a doll that was passed down in the family, and that doll, its head was smashed in by a soldier. And I say that because I want you to know that that's what leftism does. It steals everything from you. And so this is our last stand. I hope you join me in fighting for freedom. That's why I'm able to stand up here. That freedom in America is the reason I can be here and say that I am running for Congress in the state of Tennessee in 2022. Thank you, guys. And lastly, I just want to say that this is my last remark. Mark Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey, a wave of lions is coming in 2022. We will not allow you to get away with what you've gotten away with anymore. You fight for the establishment, we fight for the people, so get ready, because you are going to have the biggest fight on your hands that you two have ever had, and that goes for everybody else in big tech. Thank you, guys.
Well said. So we got a little, I wish you guys could see backstage, because we have way too much fun back there. We have a side bet right now. You might want to get in on this action with whoever's sitting next to you. There are two people back there, and the bet is who's going to make a bigger headline. There's a guy by the name, you may have heard of him, Charlie. Yeah, that guy. By the way, I know Charlie because right now Charlie's grinning real big right now because he's looking at another guy named Matt Gaetz. Yeah. And they're comparing applauses right now, but really the side bet is who makes bigger headlines today. I have a feeling it's going to be a tight one. You guys get your side bets, a little action down here. So let's talk about government for just a moment. I have been asking myself this question for a couple years. Where the hell has my government been protecting my free speech? Where the hell is my government that is making sure that my words aren't being deleted? Where are they? The guy who's coming out next, Matt Gaetz, knows a lot about government. He's going to chat about that. Give him a big warm welcome.
I haven't gotten that good a warm welcome since I was in Wyoming. My fellow patriots, don't be shy and don't be sorry. Join me as we proudly represent the pro-Trump America First wing of the conservative movement. We're not really a wing, we're the whole body. We're the main attraction in the greatest show on earth. It's our ideas that fill the stadiums with cheering fans, and while the establishment owns the think tanks, we're the ones doing all the thinking in the populist movement as conservatives. Turns out populism is popular, and everyone can see who the fakes and the phonies are and where we could find the real deal. A year ago at CPAC, I was the first Republican in Congress to swear off donations from federal lobbyists and political action committees. Their money is no good with me. Now, I can't say I started a movement. Not a single other Republican joined me. But it turns out I was ahead of the curve because the woke corporations turned around and canceled us. Many Fortune 100 companies will not donate to pro-Trump Republicans. Some have even pulled their sponsorships of this conference. American business should be worried about business, not wokeism. We gather here today in the shadow of Disney, a corporation that recently canceled its own founder, Walt Disney. Look out, Mr. Potato Head, you're next. I'm sorry, I think now he's going by Potato X. Can't be Mr. Potato. And see, to me, the whole concept of the Mr. Potato Head was you could move the parts around. I mean, Mr. Potato Head was America's first transgender doll, and even he got canceled. So while I stand alone in the House Republican Conference in my rejection of PACs and lobbyists, I am never alone when I stand with you, the great people of the greatest country that has ever existed. Now, unlike the left and even some Republicans, the America First movement will never sell out to foreign interests abroad or special interests here at home. Our citizens come first, sorry, not sorry. Now, I'm a canceled man in some corners of the internet. I'm a banned man in the state of New Jersey. The governor literally said I was unwelcome. Many days I'm a marked man in Congress, a wanted man by the deep state, but every day I'm a Florida man, and it is good to be home. Florida's like an amazing woman, adventurous, beautiful, mostly sunny, sometimes a little crazy, and always here to encourage and support success. By contrast, New York is like a bad ex-husband. Mean, won't let you go out to dinner, you're less safe, financially spiraling downward, and they may kill your grandparents. Now, the fake news media and their allies in Silicon Valley made Governor Cuomo out to be some iconic cross between King David and Tom Brady. What a big lie that turned out to be. According to former aides, Governor Cuomo was offering to replace staff meetings with strip poker. Meanwhile, they were stripping Granny out of the COVID ward at the hospital and tossing her in the nursing home, just enough time to infect everybody and then go back to the hospital so that deaths could be recategorized for politics. How about freedom for young and healthy people, learning for students, opportunity for entrepreneurs? How about we ditch the lockdown governors like Cuomo and Newsom and Murphy and never ditch the American way of life and the American spirit? Now, speaking of all this bias, it was awful the way the media treated Ted Cruz. I mean, the left and the media were more worried about Ted Cruz going to Mexico to spend his own money than they are about the caravans coming through Mexico to take ours. The greatest threat to our liberty is big government, and the second greatest threat to our liberty is big business. And there is no bigger business than big tech. The flow of digital information impacts every aspect of our lives. If we win the debate but lose the internet, ours will be the last generation of American greatness. They'll open the borders, lock down our businesses, and squelch even the faintest whispers of dissent. And here's what I don't get. Leaders in both parties have no problem flooding the deserts of the Middle East with American cash and American blood over the mirages of democracies potentially emerging far, far away. But they won't lift a finger here in our country to do what is necessary to preserve our republic, and that is to ensure access to the digital world for everyone, regardless of their politics. Elon Musk calls Silicon Valley Sanctimonious Valley for a reason. And the terms of service on Twitter can never be more important than the values that undergird our Constitution. We need more than a legalistic definition of the First Amendment. We need a culture of free speech in America. Now, when big tech and big government team up, America starts to look more like China. And the Chimerica dream is shamefully a nightmare for our people. All technology means is doing more with less. When big government fuses with big tech, government only becomes more efficient at acquiring and centralizing power. Tyranny with greater ease and lower cost. Bill Clinton famously joked that China's attempt to control the internet would be like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. It turns out the Middle Kingdom has done even more nailing than the 42nd president. They even send their spies to nail some of our politicians. Conservatives rightly rail against the evils of socialism, yet the China model perhaps embodies something more dangerous, and we're heading in that direction. A captive capitalism, a corrupt linkage between business and government that enriches the elites and reduces the rest of us to interchangeable parts, just producers and consumers. And we should never let the virtue of disagreement and debate go away for the ease of clicks and memes. We were promised that technology would disrupt and democratize power. But what happens when all of the technology companies ultimately get the power and the government all at once? There are no checks and balances when they can control, alt, delete anyone for any reason. Now, in China, this means that the government assigns people a social credit score, where you live, where your children go to school, professional opportunities, access to government programs. It all depends on what government and tech think of you. Just look at what's happening in the Biden administration today, a revolving door with Twitter, Facebook, Google, Amazon executives rolling into the government to create a unified system. And maybe we would feel better if government was getting big tech's brightest. Sadly, we're not. Listen to how things have changed. Prior to social media in Silicon Valley, the most significant investor and customer was the Department of Defense. Our best minds worked on bombs and radar and stealth, often in partnership with DARPA. Jeff Bezos' grandfather was actually the number 4 person at DARPA. But as commerce moved online, the incentives for focused digital talent moved too. Today, America's sharpest minds are focused on memes, not munitions, likes, not lasers, ratios, not robotics, and hyperviral, not hypersonic. So are these social networks really making us stronger, safer, or do they just further addict us to our vices? Instagram for vanity, Twitter for wrath, Uber Eats for gluttony, and Tinder for lust. We need a renewed patriotic nationalism in America. In technology, that means let's get our best team together and go whip China. And in politics, it means let's get our best team together and go whip the establishment. Speaking of people who ought to lose primaries, if Liz Cheney were on this stage today, she'd get booed off of it. What does that say? The leadership of our party is not found in Washington, D.C. You are the energy. We are America. That's why they're in the 8 square miles of Washington, D.C., and we're here in the Sunshine State of Florida. Now, Trump may not have drained the swamp all the way yet. So if you want to finish the job, maybe hire a Florida man. We've drained swamps before. We faced down the alligators and the pythons and the lizards and mosquito as big as grapefruit. America needs real fighters today, maybe now more than ever, and we must win, for we have a country to save. And so come fight with me. Go to mattgaetz.com, join our America First movement, and let's go get them.
We almost played you off stage, but we didn't want to censor you, brother. We didn't want to censor you. He may be the only speaker that gets an extra 4 minutes. Give him a round of applause. I feel like these notes in my hand from that I got here, a guy named Charlie Kirk, he's back there. I feel like we should auction them off. I feel like we should auction these off for a kid to get a scholarship next year. So maybe at the end we might be able to do that if I can approve him to get that done. I tell you what, social media is important, and the proof of it is the man that's about to come out here. A man that figured out the algorithm to inspire and connect young conservatives in this country to stand up and not be ashamed, especially on college campuses. We know how bad college campuses are. We know how hard it is to be a conservative. I remember meeting literally at CPAC, 21-year-old, and I'm a young guy, Charlie, and they were like, he's starting this new thing, and it's going to be called Turning Point, and they all the people around had matching clothes on. How many of you remember that, right? They were showing we're here, and they're like, they're going to build this thing. I was like, dude, if this happens, this could change college campuses nationwide, and guess what? It did. Please welcome Charlie Kirk to the stage, my friends.
나갈 때 보니까 사람들이 이렇게 막 좀 여유 있게 나가더라고요, 사람들도. 한번 생각해 보세요.
It's an honor to be with you guys today. You might be saying, what on earth is Charlie wearing? What kind of tie is this? This is a 1990 Rush Limbaugh tie. And I thought, what better place to honor one of the greatest Americans, quite honestly, ever to live, than at CPAC. Let's just remember for a moment the legacy of Rush Limbaugh. I mean, he impacted my life. I know a lot of people here had their lives impacted by Rush Limbaugh. I was honored to be able to call him a friend the last couple of years, and his generosity, his commitment, his wisdom, how relentless he was to defend our country, never betraying his audience, and my goodness, did we lose a legend last week. So let's give it up to Rush Limbaugh and his family, an absolute gift to our country, Rush Limbaugh. Rush was a fighter for free speech. We talk a lot about free speech. We talk about the importance of the First Amendment. However, sometimes we as conservatives stop short of protecting freedom of speech where it matters most. So I'm going to ask you a question. Which is more powerful, Google or our federal government? Now, we as conservatives are taught to answer that question automatically by saying the federal government. Now, I'm not doubting that the federal government has power. The federal government can imprison people. They can audit you. They have the power of the law. However, if that were to happen, you at least get some due process rights. You're supposed to get representation by an attorney. You're able to sue your government if they do something illegal to you. What happens if Google comes after you? What happens if Google decides to digitally assassinate a certain person, like what we saw happen last month? They can wipe away the existence of an idea, of a human being, of a political movement instantaneously. So I understand lots of conservatives are hesitant to talk about challenging big tech, hesitant about challenging Menlo Park and Silicon Valley. But we as conservatives should not become corporatists. We as conservatives should ask ourselves, what does it mean to be a conservative? First and foremost, we are here to conserve God-given liberties and freedoms. We are here to protect the family, our country, the American way of life. And when a group of people in a concentrated area controlling trillion-dollar companies decide to impose a viewpoint that is completely contrary to the American way of life, and then we say, well, we can't do anything because they're a private company. Excuse me, as soon as you have 200 million users and 93% of all search results, you're not the local flower shop or the local coffee shop, and you shouldn't be treated as such. And we as conservatives must be very clear. If you do not support breaking up big tech or challenging big tech, you are not a conservative, you are a corporatist. You see, the Founding Fathers were very worried about the centralization of power. I love limited government. But why do we love limited government? We love it so that we can live lives as we see fit. The Founding Fathers loved liberty. They believed liberty was given to us by God, not by government. But the Founding Fathers never imagined that a small collection of companies could potentially be more powerful than our own government. Google is more powerful than our government, and there is no check and balance against them. People say, start a competitor. Well, then they'll wipe you out like they did to Parler. People say, well, what harm has Google actually done to the country? Well, besides addicting our children to their smartphones all day long and destroying the humanity of an entire generation, besides censoring different political opinions, even beyond that, they have the potential power to obliterate any political movement. We saw it with one of the most grotesque and dangerous acts of political interference in American history. 1 month out from the election, Hunter Biden's laptop, that story was given to the New York Post. Anyone who tweeted about it, anyone who posted about it, immediately had their account suspended. Just look at the New York Post. We have now given the entire future of American politics to basically 2 or 3 companies. And so what's the solution here for us as conservatives? What does this mean? Well, number one, we must identify the problem. And I'm going to just say something that needs to be said. Any Republican that takes money from NetPAC or from Google should leave the Republican Party. Any Republican that is funded by Google has no place in the Republican Party. We, as conservatives, must treat donations that you get from Silicon Valley like we treat donations from Planned Parenthood. We would never put up if a Republican came on stage here and said, oh, I'm financed from Planned Parenthood. Then why do we tolerate big tech companies financing our lawmakers? There are 2 governments in our country. There's the federal government and the government of Menlo Park. The ability to process and share information is critical to the future of our civilization. For all the lawmakers that are passing through here, or for people that want to win elected office, there are 2 things that conservative grassroots care about more than anything else. Number one, restoring election integrity in our country for fair and free elections. And number two, it is challenging big tech. It is giving us the ability to speak freely on social media. We should never take a default position just to defend corporations. I love free enterprise. That's why I want to challenge these corporations, because they don't. They are not believers in capitalism. They're not believers in free enterprise. They use technology, and they use our own slogans and our own phrases and our own books against us as an excuse for us not to challenge them. So in closing, I want to say this. We as conservatives are very careful about identifying existential threats, and we should be. Because we as conservatives believe the biggest problem in your life is probably you and your actions. That personal responsibility, self-discipline, is inherent in being a good citizen and leading a happy and full life. But if we do not challenge these big tech companies, if we are not serious about the threat that they pose to our livelihood, to spreading information, or in some ways not spreading information at all, then we will live in a country where every state is like California. Now, this is why Ron DeSantis is a phenomenal governor. Why? Because the states need to rise up against these tech companies, as Ron DeSantis did. So for every Republican attorney general out there, sue these tech companies now for platform access, for monopolistic practices. We, as conservatives, have more power than I think we realize. We have purchasing power, we have consumer power, and we must, in a variety of different ways, make sure our lawmakers do not take money from these corporations, push back against their pattern of actions, and be unafraid to entertain ideas, to liberate the marketplace, empower real entrepreneurs, because the digital age is upon us. And if we do not have free speech or first freedoms, then we're all going to live in a country that is unrecognizable. And I believe if we do that and restore integrity in our elections, we're not just going to win a little, we're going to win big, and we're going to win for the next couple decades. Our best days are ahead. God bless you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Well done. We're going to call an audible here. This was not on the program, and it is something that I am genuinely excited, and I want you to hear the message you're about to hear. There is a guy that's been described as the outsider, the Ted Cruz of the Republic of Korea. A man that saw elections change in his country. A man that saw the power of changing elections. A man that understood what can happen when you change how things are done. In fact, it's a man that warned in this country several years ago of what could happen if you decided to start altering and changing things. We decided to pull him up here because we thought it was important after everything that just happened in this country to talk about influence and how these things can happen and the warnings, because he is living through this right now in his own country. Please give me a warm welcome to Mr. Min, I should say, as he comes out, a former National Assembly member of the Republic of Korea.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. 안녕하세요. Ladies and gentlemen, I am the son of a houseboy who worked for American soldiers. My father was 16 when the Korean War broke out. He helped the soldiers with shining their shoes, doing their laundry, and cleaning. In doing so, my father learned English, and he was my hero. I dreamed of speaking English as well as he did. If my father saw me speaking today, he would be so proud of me. We all know of the American dream. In Korea, we also have the Korean dream. We call it a dragon rising up from the ditch. Growing up, we did not even have the bathroom in the house. Despite such difficult circumstances, I worked extremely hard and became a dragon out of the ditch. While my father was alive, I was his pride and joy. I graduated from South Korea's Ivy League Yonsei University and joined the major South Korean broadcasting network, KBS. I was Washington, D.C. correspondent and the main evening news anchor. I was the Korean version of Tom Brokaw or Peter Jennings. Following my career as a journalist, I was the presidential spokesperson for former President Park Geun-hye, and after that, I was elected to the National Assembly. So, what am I doing here? On April 15th last year, I lost in the general election. Just like President Trump, my loss was due to election fraud. I have since been fighting diligently against election fraud in South Korea. However, I was ignored by the leftist government, the mainstream media, and the judiciary, all dominated by current President Moon Jae-in. So last September, I came to DC and I engaged the American media, government, and the international community regarding the truth of election fraud. I even held a one-man protest in front of the White House, the Capitol, and at the United Nations headquarters to expose what happened in Korea. I warned, be aware or be next. I predicted that the November 3rd US presidential election would have strange statistics and that communist China would be involved in the election fraud. These predictions all came true. How could I do that? Because similar things happened in South Korea and to my own self in my district of Incheon. It was planned by leftists. Electronic voting machines were manipulated. CCP intervened. And early voting and mail-in ballots were manipulated as well. There's overwhelming evidence of election fraud. But let me share with you one thing from my district. There were 3 candidates in my district, including myself. And the ratio of ballot cast for in-district and out-of-district early voting for all 3 candidates were the same, 0.39. What are the odds? A famous South Korean statistician said that this is like throwing 1,000 coins in the air and all of them landing on the same side. Another eminent professor said that it was either God's work or it was fraud. Election fraud is the biggest threat to democracy. Many South Koreans were shocked that it had happened in the US. And we hoped that justice would be served for President Trump and the truth will prevail. However, it did not happen. I was sorry and the Korean patriots were sorry. But let's not be disheartened. Let's work together. During the Korean War, General Douglas MacArthur saved South Korea with Operation Chromite, or the Incheon Landing. Democracy was saved, and I'm grateful. 70 years after the Korean War, the democracies of South Korea and the US are again facing a threat due to election fraud. In order to solve this problem, an active collaboration between conservatives in the 2 nations is very much needed. Operation Chromite's odds of success were 5,000 to 1 against. Our efforts to expose election fraud and to defend democracy might be more difficult, but we cannot stop now. The memorial for Operation Chromite is in the district I represent, Yeonsugu-ul Incheon. I don't think this is a coincidence. The seeds of freedom planted by General MacArthur 70 years ago in Incheon grew in my father's heart and mind. And that made me fight for freedom. The son of a humble American soldier's houseboy now shouts, let's go together in this fight to preserve freedom and democracy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I told you it was going to be a good audible there. That was a good audible. So where do we go from here is the question, and how do we win this battle? Because I'm not going to concede, and clearly because you are here in the great state of Florida, you're not going to concede either. How do we win this battle against big tech? I go back to what the governor said this morning in the great state of Florida when he said, we're taking on big tech as a state. That is how we are going to win this battle. It's not going to be in Washington over the next 4 years. I can promise you that. In fact, we had many Republicans that did not fight to bring in and rein in big tech as they were going after many conservatives as we were yelling at them to please help us out. And they did nothing but tweet about it, and they didn't pass any legislation to stop it. It's a problem in this country. First of all, I mean this when I say this to every one of you. You know when you see those posts on social media of people that you like and you agree with, share them. We have to get back to grassroots. It's no longer good enough to see it. It's no longer good enough to like it. You have to help spread the word because the algorithms are against us. We know that. Second, find out who your local elected officials are that represent you at the state legislatures and go talk to them, because right now, that is how we are going to beat big tech in this country. They're the ones that are going to have to rein in big tech. They're the ones that are going to have to do exactly what Governor DeSantis said we are going to do in the legislature in this state. That is how we win. And finally, make sure that every friend and family member you know does not keep giving their money, their time, their information to companies that disdain our values. Why do we continue as conservatives? Because I will say this, liberals do it better than we do. They vote with their dollars, and they make sure they don't give money to anybody they disagree with. And we, for far too long, as a conservative movement, continue to give our dollars for convenience to organizations and people just like Amazon who say, hey, we're going to take down places like Parler. And we have to stop doing it in this country. We have got to protect freedom of speech. We have to make sure that the next generation of conservative, and it's fun to be here being a little bit older. I came to my first CPAC, I think, when I was 17. We have got to make sure they even have a place to have an opinion that disagrees with the big tech and what the liberal media tells them they have to agree with. We have to have a place for them to fight, protect, and defend this country's freedom of speech so that they don't grow up in a society where they can't say anything at all. God bless you guys. Thanks for supporting CPAC. Thank you for coming out. And we'll see you next year.
What are you doing? Need a box and a shipping label?
No. I missed the sign-up period for my health care. So now I need to make it to next year without getting hurt.
Did you look into Liberty Health Share? Sign up any time of year.
No, I didn't.
Didn't think so.
Ow!
You've seen the radical left pushing their agenda in Washington. Socialism, amnesty, censorship. But in the states, quietly, these radicals are pushing a power play that would give them more power. Forever. The left's National Popular Vote campaign would let liberal cities on the coasts pick the president every single time. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact would shred the Constitution. The leader of the group bragged to the New York Times that it's a way to get around the founders' design. And what about election integrity? A national vote could require a national recount, but the left's National Popular Vote plan doesn't allow it. But it does set the stage for a complete federal takeover of elections. Goodbye local control. To win now, it takes a broad coalition across the country. But National Popular Vote would open the door to regional parties and spoiler candidates, making it easier for socialists to win. Defend the Constitution. Stop socialism. Stop National Popular Vote.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Big Tech is for sale, China and Russia are buying. Please welcome our panel. From the Buck Sexton Show, Buck Sexton. From the Hudson Institute, Rebecca Heinrichs. Former U.S. Acting Attorney General, Matthew Whitaker. And our moderator, from the American Conservative Union, K.T. McFarland.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you for all being here. This is where we get the really serious, wonky part of CPAC, which means you do not immediately now head for the doors. Look, China, Russia, big tech. What could possibly go wrong? You know, if we'd had this conversation 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, we wouldn't have thought, well, that's a problem, right? Russia, we beat Russia during the Cold War. They're finished. China, as even Joe Biden said a year ago, hey, man, they're not going to eat our lunch. They're our friends. They're not competitors. And we would have all happily turned over every bit of our personal information to Amazon, Google, Facebook, you name it. But here we are, and the world is a very different place. And we now have a pretty serious conversation to have. I want to start with China. You know, China's plan, and they've been quite open about it in recent years. 10 years ago, they weren't. Now they're very open about it. They plan to replace the United States as the dominant world power, economically, technologically, militarily, politically, diplomatically. Their original plan was to do it by mid-century. They've pulled up the timeline between the pandemic and the election of Joe Biden, who they know will be very soft on China. They've now pulled up the timeline. They think they're going to get there within the decade and maybe within the next 5 years, and they might. The next issue, though, is Russia. Russia, we thought they were gone. They were done. They can't compete as a serious world power. What did Barack call them? Barack Obama? Oh, some regional third world power, basically. Well, the Russians are back, and the Russians are back in the cyber technology, but this time it's different. With Putin, it's personal. I mean, Putin saw the collapse of the Soviet Union, he blamed the United States, he blamed the West, and so it's payback time. He knows he can't compete with China or even the United States, but what he wants to do is be a spoiler. He wants to muck around in our elections, and he wants to hack into the American technology and in every other thing. So he's a problem, but it's a personal problem. But then the final thing is big tech. You know, three months ago, we all thought they might have been our friends. And now it's cancel culture, they've deplatformed people, they are becoming political adversaries of free speech in the conservative movement. So with that, I want to just turn to our experts. And I'd like to start first with Buck Sexton, who's going to talk to us about the Russia threat, and then Rebecca Heinrichs about China, and then our former Attorney General, who's going to tell us about big tech. And we're going to ask them all, what are we going to do about it? So Buck, would you like to take off?
So I would ask that you think about how you view the success of the Russian information operation in 2016. Because most conservatives think about this in the context of, it was wildly exaggerated, it didn't change the election, and that's all true. But there's also a follow-up to that. Russia was actually more successful in 2016 with the pretty minimal hacking that they did in terms of the election and Facebook and all the things you know about than they ever could have really imagined. When you look at the cascade of effects that came after that, and yes, this is only possible because of the Democratic Party and the Russia collusion hoax. KT, you could speak to that in more detail than I can, having been closer to that, and the way the Democrats turned this into a weapon. But what Russia was able to do was create the grounds for one, a 4-year-long story that they still cling to. I mean, you will see people on news today still who say that Russia collusion was real, that it still happened in some capacity. Collusion's not a crime. We didn't say conspiracy. They play that game. But also, you have the beginnings of big tech now in full-out censorship mode because of the 2016 narrative of Russia hacking the election. And all the people, the Democrats, woke folks on the left, decided something must be done about this to stop it. That's actually the justification for why people like me, even, and many others at this conference, are being censored on social media. It all goes back to that 2016 hacking. And then when you add to this that Putin right now, they actually just put Navalny, who's the most well-known critic of Moscow and essentially anti-corruption crusader, they sent him to a penal colony. That was just a few hours ago, that was reported. So that's what you don't want to have happen. Russia now, and we can talk about some of the specific platforms they use, is in a position where they can say, if American political tech, or American tech rather, can be politicized to squash dissent on effectively a partisan basis, why can't we? Think about the precedent that has been set. Think about the layers here. You had 4 years of Russia collusion nonsense against Trump, then you had big tech weighing in, and now you have actual autocrats around the world saying, if Twitter and Facebook can block conservatives from having speech, guess what we can do in Moscow? And I haven't even gotten to the fact that they're still more skilled at hacking than the Chinese, although the Chinese are a bigger threat, but I will leave it there.
Pretty scary. Rebecca, what are the Chinese up to?
What I'd like to do is start off by saying, why do we talk about China and Russia? Why are those the two big countries we talk about most? And that is because when you think about the threats to the United States, you think about what is the country's objective and what is their ability to carry out that objective. And of those two countries, China, as KT said, has the desire, the will to replace the United States as the global superpower, and now they have the greatest ability to carry that out, economically, militarily, and then tech. And I'm going to talk most about that third basket. Russia, still a very serious problem, doesn't have the same kind of engine that China has economically. They have a lot of nuclear weapons, and so they are a serious competitor that we care about greatly, and they have the desire to undermine the United States, but they don't have the engine and the ability like China has to carry out just the amount of destruction that China can to undermine the United States and replace the United States as the global preeminent power. Why does it matter for the United States to remain the global preeminent power? Because the country that has the biggest economy and the biggest military and the most alliances and partners is going to be able to put our fingerprint on things like trade, on things like travel and commerce. And we know, certainly as conservatives and as Americans, that the United States has the moral high ground there. We want to put the United States' influence on things like trade and global business, et cetera, and commerce. And so we have to fight for that. Now, that means militarily it was Donald Trump. It was the Trump administration that said, enough is enough. The United States is going to have our lunch eaten, Joe Biden, if we don't do something about it, and it's going to happen by the Chinese Communist Party. And so what does that mean? It means we have to start competing. And it was the Trump administration that really oversaw this seismic shift and helped the United States to take the Chinese threat seriously. And so we have to put money into our military to make sure that we are deterring Chinese aggression in the Western Pacific. We want to stand with our Taiwanese partners, great contributors to the free world, our South Korean allies, our Japanese allies, our Australian allies. And we want to make sure that we are able to make good on our security commitments to them and that China can't push us out. That's the military piece. Economically, that's why we get into trade, a trade war with the Chinese. But on tech, the Chinese want to use technology to censor and to steal. Remember those two things, censor and steal. That's how they do it. And so they do it by having these 5G. It's the next generation technology abilities of fast-speed internet. Again, the previous administration said we have to have clean network initiative. Our Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, was the face of that. He said the UK can't have their Huawei, and we can't deal with these other technology companies, Chinese companies, and 5G networks. It has to be clean, and we can't let them take our data and take our allies' data as well. And so you have to have clean network technology. So it's going to take a federal level. We can't let ZTE and these other companies steal the United States' information technology, and we can't let them censor the United States. And so those are the big things. It's going to take federal level, state level. We've got a great example here in Florida. with a state representative that KT knows well. Her daughter is a state representative here, introduced a piece of legislation to make sure that Floridians have to concede, they have to agree to have their data handed over to technology companies, to take ownership of their own technology. So it's going to take federal level work, state level work, and it's going to take individual. This is my last point. You individually have to care that your data is not being sucked up by the Chinese Communist Party and by big tech. You have to care enough, because they can muscle us out, but they can also win by our acquiescence, and that's something that we can't do. So look and see what technology you're using. Do not buy commercial technology and drones off the shelf that are made in China. There's no distinction in China between the private sector and the military. They take all of it and they apply it, put it in artificial intelligence and quantum computing to sift through all of that information data and weaponize it against us. And I will leave it at there to continue our discussion.
Well, I think that leads pretty easily. It's great. So between the two of you, we're now on the big data and big tech, and are they the enemy?
Yeah, well, obviously, how many people here have lost followers on social media recently?
Oh.
How many have lost 10,000 plus followers on social media? I know both KT and I have experienced that when the purge happened on Twitter, and the same thing happens on Facebook, and big tech is not our friend, and they are too powerful, they are too ubiquitous, they are too important. And I know that all of us here could talk for hours on this subject. But the real thing that I want to leave you with is it's not just losing followers. It's not just not being able to communicate. I mean, our First Amendment rights obviously protect our speech in the public square. But right now, Twitter, Facebook, and other social medias are controlling and regulating your speech. I think inconsistent with American values, quite frankly. I think American company that doesn't allow everyone to speak, no matter if you, in fact, I think most of us grew up and believe to this day that I may disagree with what you say, but I will defend your right to say it to the death, quite frankly. That's not what big tech's about. Big tech is now manipulating data and thereby manipulating public opinion and elections by what you see and how you see it. As much so as how they study the color of the background to see how effective and persuasive messaging can become. We are being manipulated beyond what our brains can comprehend. That's not even the scariest thing, my friends. The scariest thing that I've seen, and many of you have iPhones, and your iPhone reminds you sometimes, do you want this app you're using to use your location all the time or only when you're using it? Well, if you've seen what's behind it, which I have, and I'm sure several of you have, that data and that location data is now being anonymized and sold to see the behaviors of individuals. But if you anonymize location data at someone's house, there's only 2, 3 people that live in that house. And then you can follow that little dot, and I've seen it done to the extreme where they followed a terrorist until he was eliminated by his cell phone location data. Because one of those apps, and you have lots of apps on your phone, follow you everywhere you go. And so that power that we have now given and we don't control is the scariest thing as I look at what our future holds. Because like this title of this panel says, KT, that data is for sale, and it's being bought by people that don't like us very much. Not just marketers, not just people that want to sell you things, but countries that are hostile to our interest and the American interest. And so I wish I had better news. As a former acting attorney general and a proud supporter of Donald Trump, I wish I could tell you that in the 4 years we accomplished a lot, and we did. But on this front, I fear that big tech is winning. Because with the Biden administration and their stance towards big tech, I don't think they're going to fight back on your behalf. And I don't think your ability to speak freely about how you feel about current events and issues of the day and who you support politically, I don't feel like those rights are going to be protected by this administration. So what does that mean? That means what we always have to do. We have to regroup. We have to stand for something and then convince others, changing hearts and minds, knowing that we are up against a massive mountain. But I think it's possible. I think we are seeing with this bill that's in Florida, and I think a lot of the individual personal information protections that we could see both move federally and then the states, I think we can take back some of the control, not only of the content that we create, but the personal information that we don't even know we're giving up. So I'll turn it, this is gonna be a great discussion, so I'll turn it back over to you, KT,
And let's go at it. Okay, so Buck, you're in the media world hours a day on the radio and television. How do you stop it? I mean, are the Chinese everywhere? Because it just seems like they're in our media, they're in our economic institutions for sure, they're at the Confucius Institutes. I mean, can you stop it, and should you stop it?
I think it's fascinating when you look, we're talking about Russia and China, and Russia is clearly the secondary concern, despite what you may have seen in the media for leading up until now, of course. But the Russians are very good at hacking. The Chinese are very good at stealing enormous amounts of data through cyber, to the point where I think you would have to say that you'd go back to the era of the Soviet Union, you'd go back to the KGB and some of their efforts, and this dwarfs that. Because back in the day, as you know, KT, you needed to have somebody, pretty much, who got access to documents, who carry them out. Now we don't even know the full scope and scale of how much is being stolen. The way I describe it on radio, with the Chinese specifically, is that this is civilization shifting level knowledge transfer. And it's the kind of thing that you don't necessarily understand the full ramifications of it until all of a sudden you realize whose fifth generation fighters are better, who's building a few aircraft carriers after not long ago. China doesn't want a blue water navy. Who remembers that? That was the smart analysis. That analysis was wrong. There's a lot of places now where you look and see the Chinese are actually out ahead of us technologically. We talked about quantum computing, 5G, where are they, where are we? And how do we stop it? Whereas the Russians come in, smash and steal, the Chinese coerce and co-opt. The Chinese Communist Party has very, very deep pockets, is incredibly sophisticated, and you see this in the way that they use college campuses, for example, and people that are doing innocuous research projects, things along those lines. How do you stop it, KT? That's the question you asked. The first step is a wake-up call, I think, for the country that I believe Donald Trump started. I'm not sure we're fully at the point yet where people understand how pervasive this is. But when NBA superstars will certainly say whatever they want about American politics, but will say, oh, I've got nothing to say about China, that brings it into the popular mindset. How powerful is this country that our globally recognized celebrity ultra-millionaires are afraid of crossing them?
Yeah,
that's
self-censoring. They're self-censoring.
Of course, they're self-censoring, and the access to the Chinese market for even the most powerful companies and corporations is too powerful at this point for us to expect any of them to put American interests first.
You know, Charlie Kirk said something I thought was really interesting. Don't expect Washington to go after big tech, because big tech's in their pockets, and they're not going to do it. You have to do it at the state level. But what's the prospect of that? I mean, can 50 individual states say, we want big tech out of our lives? We want China out of our lives? I mean, Matt, you know, talk me through that one.
There's a lot we can do with the states, and I hope that we have not completely given up on electing courageous individuals that are willing to advance the things we care about. So I'm not yet willing to give up on the fact that we can elect members of Congress like Matt Gaetz, or you know, senators, you know, that are willing to do the people's work. And if they're not, then we should question our whole very being. But I think in the near term, I think you're absolutely right. I think state legislatures around the country are going to have to lead on this front. And you know, but it's always been, they've been the laboratories of innovation. And I think once, you know, the people speak through the states, then will find the right regulatory scheme to take back some of this, you know, power that is contained in our data.
You said something really interesting, Rebecca. You were talking about the Chinese plan to replace the United States technologically. So are we still, I mean, we think of ourselves, right, as we're the technological superpower. The only thing the Chinese have is what they steal, and the Russians don't have much of anything. But are we really still the cutting edge of technology? Are we the drivers of world technology? Because, you know, technology drives the future. And if we're not there, then Who has the commanding heights of technology?
In many of the key fields, we still are, but the Chinese are engaged in massive espionage. I mean, to steal our technology, to be educated in our universities, especially in these STEM programs, you know, the hard sciences, to learn what we're doing here. And of course, they're exploiting the American benevolence and kindness. We want to have this open system where they come here and then learn the American way. But that's not what's happening. They're coming here. The Chinese Communist Party has long tentacles that reach across the ocean. And so just because you have a Chinese national here studying in our universities, we want them to have a taste of the American dream. But many of these individuals are still members of the Chinese Communist Party and taking that information and that knowledge and going back and pouring it into their own fields.
What the heck are they doing with it, though? Okay, so they're stealing our medical information. They're stealing our personal data. I mean, are they designing biological weapons that will only affect America? I mean, what are they doing with all this stuff?
Well,
they're vacuuming it up like mad.
They're certainly eroding the commercial advantages that we have. When you look at some of the most valuable companies in the world, they're largely built on intellectual property. You look at the algorithms that run Google. You look at different companies, whether you're talking about aerospace and defense. I mean, clearly the military and intelligence applications of what they're doing that's a huge driver behind this. But they've also made commercial espionage something that is, again, on an unprecedented in human history scale. We've never seen anything like this before in terms of the duration as well as the actual sheer volume. And KT, I mean, you and I both know from the government side, it's hard to even understand how much of this we're catching, how much of this we're not catching, you know, a lot of companies don't even want to admit when they've been essentially robbed by cyber.
So I asked a tech expert, the former White House chief information officer, I said, well, what about these companies? Why are they not protecting my data? And she said, you know something, KT? They found this easier to buy insurance. Okay. And if they're hacked, then they have to pay the insurance out and they figure it out. It's much less expensive and much easier than for them to take all the steps they have to take to protect your data.
I got a nice little, I mean, I used to work at the CIA, which is why I think they put me up here on this specific topic, and I got a nice little note from the Office of Personnel Management in the mail saying that, they didn't say China, but it basically was China, got all your stuff, good luck.
I think they refer to it as a state actor.
Here's 6 months of identity theft protection. They robbed my government file, they know more about me than most of my friends, and I had, you know, some sort of a notification if somebody tries to buy a house in my name in Beijing.
And on that point too, KT, I think it's important to remember, and some of these Republican senators are putting these Biden nominees on the spot in their Senate confirmation hearings, which is great. And that is, they're saying, listen, are you going to treat American companies as American companies first, not these transnational, no loyalty to a set country? That's the problem. Over the last many decades, companies that got really rich because of our system, because of the system that we have that's great for ingenuity, great for business, that's great for transparency and accountability, all of those things, they forgot where they're from and who they owe their loyalty to. And they've become these global companies. And so we have to get back to saying, no, all Google, Twitter, all of these companies, they owe it to Amazon. They need to be American companies first and foremost.
I want to go back to something you said, because I think it is far-fetched that the Chinese would take our data, release a pathogen or a virus on the United States, and then cripple our economy. I don't think that will happen in our lifetime. But in all joking aside, we still are the innovation capital of the world. You look at how we created the vaccines in record time.
Yeah, who would have thought? I mean, China sent it on the world and America cured it.
They had it before we had it, and they still haven't really produced an effective vaccine like we have. And so there's America is still the global leader in innovation. The challenge is exactly what the other panelists point out, and that is the Chinese understand that, and they want to be in a position that once we prove a concept, they can steal it. And so that's why things like Huawei routers, which you mentioned, need to be taken out of the entire U.S. communication system. Yeah, we cannot have a Huawei router in the United States. The 5G, the Chinese were very involved in development of the 5G protocol for the first time really in the world, sort of system of creating those protocols. And I think one of the reasons they were so involved was so that they could seed any network with an ability to take down the data that crosses that network. It's a scary time, and if we don't wake up, and if our leaders don't wake up, I think we're in for a long-term struggle against the Chinese.
Trudeau's not going to wake up, by the way. No. The Chinese are going to get their way with him.
The bottom line of all of this is it's a wake-up call. It's, 2 minutes to midnight. We really have to, as a nation, figure this out, whether it's to break up big tech, whether it's to maintain the commanding heights of technology, whether it's to go after protect our systems as a national government or as state governments. But this doesn't go away. This only gets worse. And I fear very much politically with the Biden administration, hey man, they're our friends. They're not gonna eat our lunch. Guess what? They wanna eat our breakfast, lunch, dinner, and make us pay for it. Thank you very much for all of your time and attention. Thank you.
Don't you agree we need voter ID and clean election rolls? Well, your Judicial Watch is in federal court right now fighting to make sure your elections will be fair and honest. Politicians don't want you to know what they're up to. Secret slush funds, secret emails, and pay to play. Judicial Watch is your watchdog in Washington, D.C., shining the light of transparency on our nation's capital.
Want to catch the latest news on government corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse?
Remember there was an impeachment? Do you remember that?
Then check out Judicial Watch's weekly update with Tom Fitton.
We're fighting Adam Schiff to try to get records about his misconduct.
Subscribe now to Judicial Watch on social media to catch Tom Fitton's weekly update.
Forgotten Hillary Clinton. Judicial Watch exposed the Clinton email scandal, and we're in court right now holding her accountable to the same laws and rules the rest of us are expected to follow.
Your ideas, innovations, and inventions are precious. Don't let patent pirates steal your treasure. Support American innovation by passing the Stronger Patents Act. You will be helping American inventors and our economy. Learn more at SaveTheInventor.com. Stolen inventions tell no tales. Stop big tech and their patent pirating ways. Support American innovation by passing the Stronger Patents Act. You will be helping American inventors and our economy. Learn more at SaveTheInventor.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the way forward. Unlocking our churches, our voices, and our social media accounts. Please welcome Florida Senator Rick Scott.
Well, first off, it's great to be here. I hope you're enjoying Florida. If you haven't moved here yet, I hope you move here for lower taxes, much better weather. So hope you're enjoying Orlando. So I just got in from Washington, and I want to make sure you're all aware of President Biden's new slogan: open borders and closed schools. As you may know, my colleagues recently voted for me to be the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. So you know what that really means. It really means that my Republican colleagues in the U.S. Senate, they have to hate me. Right? You have to raise $1 gazillion, and now you have to navigate all the infighting in the Republican Party. Sounds like a lot of fun, right? Should be pretty easy. So, now many people are saying that my job is to mediate between warring factions on the right and mediate the war words between the party leaders. Doesn't sound like much fun. Well, I've got some news for you. I'm not going to mediate anything Instead, I'm going to fight for our conservative values. I'm going to do it boldly, and I'm not going to apologize to anyone for what we believe in. I'm not going to, absolutely. I'm not going to spend 1 second going backward. We're going to look forward, and we're going to fight for our conservative values and principles, and we're going to do it boldly, and we're not going to apologize to anyone. Why do we do it? Because it's good for every American family. I will spend every day talking about how Democrats are an absolute mortal threat to our freedom, to our prosperity, to our way of life, to our families, and the future of the United States of America. We are going to go right at these radical left-wing fanatics every second. And we're going to expose them for exactly what they are. We're not going to stand down, and we're never, ever going to retreat. Now, let me make sure there are 3 things that are abundantly clear right up front. First, both of the impeachments of President Trump were nothing more than unserious political vendettas and political theater. This last charade should have been conducted at the other end of Washington at the Kennedy Center instead of the U.S. Capitol. It was a waste of time and money and was all about politics. Second, President Trump did something that has never been done in our lifetime. He stood up to all of establishment Washington and said no. No, I will not accept business as usual. No, I will not allow any bad trade deals that favor Communist China and hurt American workers. No, I will not cozy up to Iran or back down from supporting Israel. No, I will not support unnecessary foreign wars or giveaways of American treasure or lives. No, I will not stop pushing for secure borders. And no, I will not accept your political correctness or the push to silence conservative voices in America. Now, of course, President Trump has flaws, I have flaws, we all have flaws. I've known him for many years. By the way, you can make sure when he speaks, or he'll probably call me tomorrow and he'll say, "Nice speech, Rick, except for that part about that he had flaws." You know that's going to happen. But look, it was high time for someone to go to Washington and say no. And I'm thankful and glad that President Trump had the guts to do it. Third, the Democrats control all the levers of power in Washington. And the new left no longer believes in any tolerance in the promise of America that our nation was exceptional, or in the American dream. It's time for all of us to wake up to reality. They want to silence you. If they can silence a former president, what makes you think you're not next? They want to take away your freedom of speech. They want to take away your religious liberty. They want to take away your right to bear arms. They want to get you fired from your job. They want to get your bank to drop you. They want to make you unemployable in the future. And you know what? They've got a lot of friends in corporate America that are absolutely willing to help them. They don't simply want you to silence conservatives. They want to destroy us. And yet, in the face of this mortal threat to our nation, our very existence, some prefer to fan the flames of a civil war on our side. That's foolish and it's ridiculous. We have absolutely serious work to get done. We don't have time for that. Let's be honest. The Washington establishment breathed a sigh of relief when President Trump left town. There are plenty of people in Washington who are hoping that we can go back to regular order. go back to where the Republican Party used to be. They want to retreat to a safe space. Look, we can go backwards. We can go to dial-up internet. We can go to flip phones. We can go to typewriters. This is absolutely not the time to go backwards. We have in front of us massive challenges and massive opportunities. I'm going to focus on the massive opportunities we have. We will not win the future by trying to go back to where the Republican Party used to be. If we do, we will lose the working base that President Trump so animated. We're going to lose elections across the country, and ultimately we're going to lose our nation. We're not going to let that happen. Now let me paint you a picture of where our adversaries want to take this country. Let me describe for you what the price of failure is. If we fail, our children will learn that throwing a brick through a shopkeeper's window and looting the store, well, that's a mostly peaceful protest. The left will tell our kids it's actually the right thing to do because of the terrible oppression in this racist country. If we fail, how many selfless police officers are still going to be around to protect us and put their lives on the line once we've demeaned and defunded them? If we fail, our armed forces, they're going to use the politically correct pronouns that Pelosi asked them to do, but our military is going to cower in the shadow of Communist China. Communist President Xi, he said he hopes for a win-win. Oh, there's going to be a win-win. Hunter Biden's going to win and get richer. And as Communist China wins, it becomes the most powerful country in the world. If we fail to lead our country into the future, Democrats will lead us into the past, eroding our economy and our culture. And we will become another decaying example of socialism. Let me say that again. If we fail to lead our country into the future, Democrats will lead America into the past. They'll ditch capitalism. Even though capitalism has lifted more people from poverty to prosperity than any idea in American history. Calling someone a capitalist will become an insult. In fact, it already is on some college campuses. But don't worry, in their phony Washington-run utopia, Chuck Schumer will tell you what kind of work you're allowed to do. AOC will tell you how you're allowed to do it. Nancy Pelosi will tell you how much you'll be paid for it. And Kamala Harris will tell you how little you're allowed to keep after you pay your, quote, fair share. In a socialist system, politically incorrect thought can't be tolerated because truth can't be tolerated. So don't think out loud. Don't suppose you have freedom to worship or that the churches they closed down during the coronavirus are essential. Don't complain about men, women, women's sports. Don't think you have the right to bear arms. Like socialist dictators, our adversaries will confiscate your weapons. If any of this sounds impossible to you, you've got to wake up. This stuff's already happening. I had a reporter the other day ask me a typically uninformed question. He said, do I believe that in order to appeal to more voters, we need to moderate our values or compromise on some of our principles? My response, hell no. Just the opposite. I believe we need to start acting like we really believe our principles. America, with all of our shortcomings, is the greatest country in the world. America is, in fact, not racist. We need to stand up and say, our fundamental principles are not only right and true, they are the only ideas that work. We choose our children's education. We respect our law enforcement. We thank God every day for our freedoms. The American family is an idea that works. We believe family should be the center of our lives and is crucial to civilization. Religious liberty is an idea that works. But Democrat mayors and governors say you can protest, but you can't go to church. Our flag, that's an idea that works if we all respect it. It's why my father chose to put his life on the line and serve this country in World War II, and why I had the opportunity to serve in the U.S. Navy. Unlike many of the woke athletes in the NBA and the NFL, we stand for the flag. Why is our nation so divided? Well, our unique individual differences as human beings become divisions without our flag, our national anthem, and our unique American identity. Our nation's founders were brilliant men who designed a system that works. It's the best system of governance in world history. And the memories of the men who built it must be honored, and we'll never allow our history to be erased. We believe strong borders work. Individual responsibility works. We believe our children have the right to be born and go to the school of their choice. School choice works. Lower taxes work. The Second Amendment works. Funding our police works. Capitalism works. Standing up to communist China dictators, buying American, and shutting the door to communist Chinese products, you better believe that works. We believe that freedom, not socialism, is always a new idea. These are our principles, and we will never compromise or moderate them to appease anyone. We care too much about each of our families and our countries to compromise or appease. These principles can and will lead us to a majority coalition in America. Are we perfect? No, but we are free to repair our faults. And the conservative principles that beat in our hearts are the only ones that actually lift people to better lives and build a great and compassionate nation. But the left's so-called progressive ideology, that old broken down idea called socialism, has not only never worked, it has destroyed more countries, families, and lives than we can count. Venezuelan children are starving today. That's socialism. Refugees are risking their lives today to flee Cuba's squalid hospitals, rationed food, and relentless oppression. That's socialism. Communist China is jailing and murdering its own citizens today because they've spoken the truth about the Wuhan virus. That's socialism. Let me leave you with this. We have generations of young people who have effectively been brainwashed by the liberals who have captured our education system. They're now attempting to capture the boardroom of every corporation and even our military leadership. Many of these young people were not taught our real history in middle school, high school, or college. They think socialism is a cool new idea. Think about that. The most disastrous and discredited idea of the 20th century, an idea that always leads to poverty and oppression. They think it's as new as the iPhone 12. It's now on each of us to explain why the Democrats' old socialist plans are a coming disaster. We've got to explain why globalist socialism is destined to fail even more spectacularly in today's fast-moving world than it has in the past. That is what I'm going to fight for. That is what I'm asking you to fight for. Our battle to win the future starts today. In Washington, they're doing the opposite. looking backward and forming a circular firing squad. They are busy assigning blame and avoiding responsibility. You and I don't have the time to waste going backwards. The people in Washington have that covered. All we've got is us, the power of our ideals, and the truth. And that is plenty. Now it's time to get to work, making this great country better than it has ever been. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless this great nation. Have a great day.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Missouri Senator Josh Hawley.
How are you? Hello, everybody. Hello, CPAC. How are you doing? Didn't anybody tell you that you're supposed to be canceled? You didn't get the memo. You're supposed to ask permission before you came here today. It's great to see you. It's great to be here among patriots. And I tell you what, can I just tell you, speaking of being canceled, the last 6 weeks, the radical left, their corporate allies, the liberal media, have tried to cancel me, censor me, expel me, shut me down, stop me from representing the people of Missouri, stop me from representing you. And guess what? I'm here today. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not backing down. Not a chance. Not a chance. And neither are you, am I right? You're not going to back down. You're not going anywhere. I just want to say to those people who say to us, oh, you're the past. Your moment has passed. It's over. It's Joe Biden's America now. I just want to say, we're not the past. We're the future. We represent the future of this country. We represent the next generation of the country. We represent what's coming next. And there is no way that we're going to back down. We're not going to back down to the woke mob. We're not going to back down to the cancel culture. We're not going to be told what we can say or do. But listen, we've got to be honest, and we got to face the challenges that are in front of us. And I tell you what, you know this or you wouldn't be here. You know that we are facing a crisis in our country. This is one of the great moments of crisis in American history. We're facing a fight for the republic itself, and we are facing an unprecedented alliance of radical liberals and the biggest, most powerful corporations in the history of the world. They are standing together. You know who I mean. People like Google, Facebook, have you heard of them? Twitter. These companies have more power than any companies in American history, and they're allying with the radical left to try to impose their agenda on this country. They want to run this country, and if we don't do something, they are going to. And we've got a word for that. It's called oligarchy. And that's what we're facing in America right now, and we've got a basic choice. We can have a republic where the people rule, or we can have an oligarchy where big tech and the liberals rule, and that is the choice, that is the challenge that we face today. It's a perilous moment. We have to stand up and take our stand on the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration of Independence, because last time I checked, the Declaration of Independence said that our inalienable rights to life and liberty come from God and not from government. Is that right? I mean, am I forgetting something? And I also thought, last I checked, I thought that the Declaration said that our rights come from God, not from Google. Is that right? I mean, last I checked. But that's the fight of our time, to make the rule of the people an actual thing again, to restore the sovereignty of the American people. And you know what? That's always been the fight. That's the fight of liberty. That's been the fight of liberty since the beginning of human history. You've always got a small group of people who think they know best, and they ought to be in charge, and they ought to be able to tell us what to think and do. And today, that's the big corporations and the liberal elites. That's the oligarchy. And what are we fighting for? It's the same thing our founding fathers fought for. We're fighting for the rule of the people. We're fighting to be able to have our own say. We're fighting to be able to run our own government. We're fighting to have real self-government in America, and that's what we're about. You know, you can see where the oligarchs want to take us. Just look at the last 2 months. The last 2 months, the big tech corporations have deplatformed conservatives left and right, shut them up, shut them out, shut them down. Heck, they censored the President of the United States. If they can censor him, they can censor any American citizen. And I've got my own experience with this, unfortunately. You know, on January the 6th, I objected during the Electoral College certification. Maybe you heard about it. I did. I stood up. I stood up and I said, we ought to have a debate about election integrity. I said it is the right of the people to be heard, and my constituents in Missouri want to be heard on this issue. And so I did what, by the way, I did what our Democrat friends, my Democrat colleagues have done in every single election where a Republican president has won for the last 20 years. Do you know they've objected to 11 different states in certifications over the last 25 years, 3 different presidential elections? So I did that, and I said I want to have a debate on election integrity. And what was the result of that? Oh, you know what the result was. I was called a traitor. I was called a seditionist. The radical left said I should be resigned, and if I wouldn't resign, I should be expelled from the United States Senate. Well, as I said a moment ago, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. I'm going to stand up for you. Because if we can't have free and open debate in this country, we're not going to have a country left. If we can't have free and open debate according to the laws in the United States Senate, what good is the United States Senate? Why do you send anybody to Washington at all? I thought it was an important stand to take. And for that, the left has come after me. They've tried to silence me. They canceled a book I was writing called The Tyranny of Big Tech. These people have no sense of irony. Still going to get published, by the way. It'll be out soon. Not long to wait. They did all of that. It didn't work. But listen, that's just a slice of what they've done. A lot of people have had it a lot worse. I mean, they made lists of Trump voters. You know this. You can find online. Lists of Trump voters so they could go and try to punish them. One outfit in Washington's keeping a list of everybody who ever worked for Donald Trump, including White House interns, to try to make sure they can never get another job in Washington again. I was struck by this story about a gal named Cara DeMoplin. She's a lady with a business online. She does a consulting on how to get babies to sleep. Now listen, before you say, what do we care about that? I've got 3 little kids at home, including a newborn. My baby Abigail, my wife and I welcomed her on November the 9th, so she's just over 3 months old. Thank you. So we're really interested in sleep. I can tell you, the Hawley household, we care about sleep. My wife knew of this gal, Cara DeMoplin, who had an Instagram online thing where she counseled people on how to get their babies to sleep. It was great. She had like 4 million followers. What happened? She supported Donald Trump. So what did they do? They came after her. They came after her, tried to shut down her accounts, tried to run her out of business. I just heard this morning, that a Christian worship leader at a church in this country who has albums, worship albums he put out, he just got a call this morning from his corporate distributor, and they told him they're not going to distribute his next album. What was his sin? He supported Donald Trump in the election. This is what corporate America and the radical left is doing. This is what they're doing left, right, and center. And they're going to keep on doing it unless we do something about it. Now, the real question is, how do we get here? How do we get to this point that these oligarchs, these massive corporations in hock with the left can do what they're doing? And you know the answer to that. The answer is that the policy experts in Washington, D.C., and the elected officials there for decades on end have let them do it. They have given them the power. How did big tech get so big? Washington gave away the store. That's how they got so big. Washington subsidized Google and Facebook. Washington subsidized Twitter. And what are these companies, these other mega corporations, these multinational companies, what have they done to repay the favor? No, you know, they've shipped our jobs to China. They paid our workers poverty wages. They have violated all of the principles that we hold dear. That's what they've done. That's what these companies, that's what they live to do. And the left is just fine with it. Because the left and these companies together, these oligarchs, they can impose their agenda on the rest of us. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. So what are we going to do about it? I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? In this moment of crisis, our country needs us to take a stand. In this moment of crisis, our country needs us to stand up and to say, we will not be ruled by giant corporations and the liberal elite. We will not be told what to do by these modern-day oligarchs. What we need is a new nationalism, a new agenda to make the rule of the people real in this country and give the people America back. Give it back to them. Give it back to you. No more ruled by oligarchs, ruled by the people. That's what we've got to do. And I can tell you how I would start. I would start by breaking up the big tech corporations. Just break them up. Break them up in the name of the rule of the people. For the good of the American people and our liberty, we need to break those corporations up and cut them down to size. You know what? The Republican Party, once upon a time, we were the party of trustbusters. You know it? I mean, we invented the concept, basically. It's time to reclaim that legacy. It's time to reclaim that legacy. And not just for big tech, but for all of the huge multinational corporations that have sold us out to China, that have sold out our workers, that have sold out our jobs. They need to be broken up. And we need to have free, fair competition in this country again. That's what it means for the people to rule. We've got to stand up to China and not allow them to continue to push us over, to take our jobs, to cheat on trade. We've got to put American workers first, not illegal immigrants. Can I just say, by the way, on that subject, just on the subject of immigration, you know, we get told all the time, oh, if you believe in a border, if you think that borders actually matter, if you think that citizenship actually matters, well, my goodness, I mean, you're a bigot. You're backwards. Can I just try to enlighten our liberal friends for a second? We believe in borders because we believe in citizenship. And we believe in citizenship because we believe in America. Citizenship, you know, where I come from in Missouri, I grew up in rural Missouri, small town right in the middle of Missouri. It's a working class town full of good folks working hard to make it every day. And I can just tell you, where I grew up, we believe in citizenship because we're proud of it. We're proud to be Americans. And when you come to America, you join a family. And in this family, we stick up for one another. We protect one another. We believe in one another. That's what citizenship means. That's why it's worth protecting. That's why we need a border. Do you agree? I mean, that's what it is. And we've got to resist the attempts of the oligarchs to divide us. You know, they will only succeed at the end of the day. They will only succeed if we do nothing and if we allow ourselves to be divided. You can see what their strategy is. I mean, we saw it this whole last year. We heard endlessly from corporate media, from big tech, from the left, how terrible our country is. We heard that we are systemically racist. You heard that once or twice? We heard that the real founding of the country wasn't in 1776, it was in 1619 or whatever. You know, we heard that America is founded in lies and evil. I mean, that's what we've been told. All of that is false. All of that is a lie. America is not a perfect place, but it's a good place. More than that, it's a great place. It's the greatest nation in the history of the world. And part of standing up to the oligarchs in tech and in the media and the liberals is reclaiming our history and saying it is good, and we are proud to be Americans. We're proud to have lived in a country that started with nothing and became the greatest country in the face of the earth. We're proud to live in a country that liberated slaves, that liberated a continent that was under the thumb of Nazi dictatorship, that rebuilt the entire world after a world war. We did all of that. This nation did all of that. And are we perfect? Of course we're not perfect. It's like your pastor says at church. Have you heard this? He said, have you ever been to a perfect church? The answer, I mean, I have never been, maybe you have. The answer is no, of course not. Why? Because it's full of people. You know, every church is full of people. America's full of people, but it's full of good people. It's full of good people who continue to seek the light and continue to strive towards that more perfect union. Now, my friends, it's up to us to stand up and to remind our fellow Americans of what we believe together, of what we love together, and to tell the oligarchs who want to rule this country that their day has passed, that we are going to stand for the liberty that our forefathers fought and died for, and we are going to make it real again in this day. We can do it. We can do it. You know, it seems now in this moment like the oligarchs and their allies are so powerful, but the truth is that the strength of America is always in the unheard voices of its people all across this great land. The strength is in you. The strength is in us together. And I just want to close with a line I've thought a lot about, a quote from Daniel Webster, who in some trying years of his own that he knew, a trying time before the beginning of the Civil War, he used to end his speeches in the United States Senate by saying, "Union now, union forever." What he meant is that for those who said that America's time had passed, that the country was hopelessly divided, that it was irredeemable, sound familiar? He said, no, union now, union forever. I just want to say, my friends, America now, America first, America forever. God bless you. It's great to be with you. Take care. Thank you so much.
It's an attack the weak against the strong. We as conservatives have ultimate faith in people.
This is Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus.
Give it to God. He is doing this for a reason. This is about veterans as they see themselves.
This is one sick person.
There is a way to find justice.
At home with me, Paula Dean.
I show you how to be happy in a hurry.
Absolutely beautiful.
We have a history, and we should learn from the history.
I think the best way you can thank me for being a veteran is be a good American.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The last samurai is right back. Hello, America. Hello, American conservatives. My name is Genki Fuji. I'm a Japanese journalist and an author of more than 70 books on international relations. I run online World Forecast News Service. I respect President Trump and American conservatives. President Trump fought against Chinese communists in order to protect the entire free world. President Trump, he's a real American samurai. I want to make US-Japan alliance stronger. I want to build solid friendship with real American patriots or American samurai. Let's fight together for freedom. Let's slash the cancel culture. Let's start US-Japan samurai to samurai alliance.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are reigniting the spirit of the American dream with remarks by Donald Trump Jr. Please welcome Kimberly Guilfoyle.
All right, all right. Well, hello, CPAC. How are we doing, Florida? How are we doing, America? I have to tell you, I absolutely love the state of Florida. I mean, really, what's not to love compared to California and New York, right? I love this state. I love Governor DeSantis, and we all love all of you. And thank you for being here today and standing for conservative values and principles. Now, in the great state of Florida, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Well, not every day, maybe like 6 out of 7. Because I got to remind you of one thing, that Joe Biden, I cannot believe it still, is in the White House. But Joe did not disappoint, because just like we told you, he is leading from behind. From behind Kamala, that is. True story. However, with Joe Biden sort of bumbling his way through the first month, the reporters probably in the back of the room are trying desperately to write our obituary. But we are alive and well in this country. The press wants you to believe that the American conservative movement is fractured. They want America to believe that this movement is dead. News flash to those out there, we aren't going anywhere. It's the thousands of conservatives here today and the millions across this country who are not going to be silenced. And we are definitely not going to cede this fight to the socialists and the communists who want to see our nation burn. The fight for liberty, the fight for conservative values, and the fight for the heart and soul of this nation will not be abandoned. That fight continues right here and right now with all of us. And that's because the America First policies and programs, we're not going anywhere. This movement is not going anywhere, and I can promise you this. President Trump is not going anywhere. He is here to stay. That's the good news. We love President Trump, and I'll tell you, I will confidently say that President Trump from his desk at Mar-a-Lago will accomplish more for America in the next 4 years than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris could ever dream of. That is because we are not giving up. The Republican Party is being reborn thanks to President Trump. It is being reborn as the party of the working class, of minorities, of hard-working American men and women, the party of America First, the party of President Trump. And we bid a farewell to the weak-kneed, the spineless, and the cowards that are posing in D.C. pretending that they're working for the people. Let's send them a pink slip straight from CPAC. What do you say? We tell them that America has no use for them, and this movement is leaving those cowards in the ash bin of history, and we will strive forward thanks to the courage, the policies, and the strength of President Trump. Instead, we will chart a new path, a path driven by bold conservative solutions, a path where we don't kowtow to the demands of the leftist mob, and a path where we are willing to stand up and fight for what we believe in and what we hold true. From California to New York, we will fight to take back this country. However, to do so, we must do 3 important things. We must demand more from our elected leaders and officials and those that are actually pursuing public office. It is not enough to just be, quote, Republican. That means very little when they get to Washington, D.C., and they don't perform. We're not interested in those type of politician empty suits. We want fighters like President Trump, warriors for this country, for America. And our movement must stay true to America first. As the Democrats scurry to re-enter the corrupt Iran nuclear deal and cozy up to China, we must understand that the survival of our nation is based on putting the American worker and the American family first. And finally, we must take our message into every corner of our nation. America first means all of Americans. All of us united together as a country. Our ideas, our conservative values, and the solutions that we champion are the key to lifting up everyone in this country. As a movement, our message must transcend party lines, socioeconomic lines, and cultural lines. As one America we put first. If we can accomplish that over the next 4 years, I can promise you, we will be winning elections. It will only be the start of what is going to happen because, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the best is yet to come. God bless CPAC. God bless Madam Mercedes Schlapp and the entire team, your family, the military, the veterans, law enforcement, first responders. God bless President Trump, and thank you, President Trump, on behalf of a grateful and humble nation. God bless this country, and ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the son of the greatest president this country has seen, a leader of the warrior MAGA movement and conservative values, Donald Trump Jr.
Wow! How's it going, CPAC? Or I heard someone earlier phrase it a little bit better. TPAC. It's what it feels like, guys. Well, first and foremost, it's awesome to be here. It's great to see this kind of enthusiasm, and it's great to actually be in a full room. You know, honestly, guys, what I see in Florida right now is exemplary of the Republican Party, right? This is a state like the party is that has open schools, open businesses, and open churches. What we've seen in some of the more left-leaning states is exactly the opposite. The only thing that they have open is open borders. And it doesn't work, guys. In the first 30 days of Joe Biden's presidency, all of the things that I said would come true in the book Liberal Privilege that I wrote last summer are happening. We listened to months of media telling us that Joe Biden, he's a moderate, don't worry. He's not going to end energy. He's not going to end pipelines, which is partially correct. He's not going to end Russian pipelines. He's only going to end American pipelines. The Russian ones are just fine. They're going to cave to China. No, that was never going to happen. Of course it happened. You think that $1 billion investment in Hunter came for free? No, the Chinese have a great return on investment. But guys, more importantly, who would have thought that within 33 days we'd be bombing the Middle East again? I would have. Oh no, guys, come on, the military-industrial complex, I'm surprised it took them 33 days. I guess they waited till the first month, so they couldn't say that was part of the first 30, but it was only shortly thereafter where we started bombing the Middle East. Speaking of bombing the Middle East, have you seen Liz Cheney's poll numbers? No, listen, the one thing I'll say for Liz Cheney is I'm sure she has a lot of bipartisan support because if there's one thing that she and Joe Biden definitely want to do, it's bomb the Middle East. Everything else is a disaster. Everything else is just rhino policies, the kinds of policies that put the Republican Party in a position where they needed a Donald Trump. No, seriously. Liz Cheney and her politics are only slightly less popular than her father is at a quail hunt. What? Fact checkers, please have at it. Fact check true. Right? Listen, like I said, Liz Cheney, she hates Donald Trump and his policies because her family has a long history of friendly fire. But she also hates them because she's tied to an establishment that has done nothing but fail us time and time again. You've heard the rhetoric from some of them over the last couple weeks, and now you've seen that change very quickly. Because if there's one thing the Republican Party has been really good at over the last few decades, is snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. They've caved to every special interest. They've caved to corporate America. They've caved and bowed to the radical left that hates their guts, hates their values, and hates their freedoms. Lincoln Project Liz, as I'd like to call her, is the leader of that failed movement. And if we want to go back to losing, if we want to go back to an America Last policy, we should be following that. But I don't, and I don't think anyone in this room does either. So, you know what, guys? The first 30 days has been a disaster. The lies the media told you wouldn't happen are all happening. But hey, at least they have a diverse cabinet. Right? No, yeah, it's very diverse. That's what we saw, right? What is the policy of the SBA? Well, first and foremost, we appointed a woman. Well, that's wonderful. Is she competent? Because there's competent women and there's incompetent women, just like there's competent men and incompetent men. We've seen that. We know that to be a fact. But when you don't have policy to address the incompetence and think you can get away with it by just talking about diversity blindly, it's sort of a problem, isn't it? This month alone, they've banned the Muppets. Right? I mean, if there's things that you thought were sort of above cancellation, you would be wrong. There is nothing the radical left won't cancel. Hasbro now wants a gender-neutral Mr. Potato Head. These are the issues of our times, folks. I mean, if Hasbro really wanted a gender-neutral Mr. Potato Head so badly, they should just slap a picture of CNN's Brian Sletler on the cover of their next potato. What? They don't call him Mr. Potato Head for nothing. I mean, you know, we might as well get something out of the branding. But guys, we can talk about all of these things. We can talk about the liberal hypocrisy, liberal privilege. Just look at how magically, in 33 days, children in cages turned into migrant shelters for children. Now, mind you, nothing actually changed. If you look at the pictures, there's nice bars on the walls. Nothing changed other than the media's outlook. Where is the outrage about this? Where is the outrage about an asinine immigration policy that is encouraging people to bring children, unaccompanied and otherwise, into a country? Guess who gets hurt? Our low-wage earners, who for the first time in modern history under Donald Trump started seeing real wage growth. We see it time and time again. There's a double standard by which we live, but when you look at what's going on, if people were informed of the actual facts, rather than spoon-fed a narrative by big tech and the mainstream media, we wouldn't be in these things. There was a poll that came out just this week that said 1 in 6 people would not have voted for Biden had they known about the Hunter Biden scandal. Yeah, where is Hunter? Guys, I'm sure he's making billions in China right now. Don't worry. Don't worry. One in 6, guys, 17% of the 80 million that voted for Joe Biden, had they even heard of the basics of his corruption. We were all talking about it, guys. It wasn't anything new, but that also shouldn't surprise us. We've been talking about Andrew Cuomo sentencing Nana to death for 10 months. But no one was going to talk about it until they got their wishes. No one was going to address Democrat incompetence. We believe all women until they accuse a Democrat. Then, not so much. But guys, that's why we have to stay engaged. That's why we have to stay in the fight. That's why we can't allow them to steamroll us like they have done for decades. When you look at what's going on just this week in Congress, you have Democrats petitioning major corporations, Comcast, Amazon, to ban conservative news outlets. Not radical parties. Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, just ban them. You don't see Republicans saying, let's talk about CNN as a place of disinformation. I mean, as a recipient of their ire for a couple of years, I can assure you that they were lying about Russia collusion. We all know that now, but no one actually brings it up because they can get away with it. They are able to do that. Big tech will silence you if you come out against it. They will crush you. They will call you racist and everything else. Just like, imagine, we'll bring back Cuomo, right? Imagine Ron DeSantis did what Cuomo has done over the last couple of years. He wouldn't be getting an Emmy. He'd be in jail. Right? Credible accusations of harassment swept under the rug. Verbal harassment swept under the rug. Hiding evidence from the DOJ swept under the rug. No problem. Give him an Emmy. Remember Fredo when he was talking about it? Oh, for months? Oh, where's Fredo? He's so quiet these days. Why isn't Fredo talking about these things right now? Again, liberal privilege. No, we can't address that. Really, you can't address that. But you had no problem joking around with massive Q-tips, making clowns of yourselves for months prior. That's what we're up against, folks. But together, we can win these fights. We have to be vocal. We can't be put in the corner. We must be out and engaged. And that's where you guys come in. So, I'm looking forward to Sunday. I imagine it will not be what we call a low-energy speech. And I assure you that it will solidify Donald Trump and all of your feelings about the MAGA movement as the future of the Republican Party. So thank you, CPAC. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the love. You guys are the best.